Hi everybody, this is Mike Oppenheim, and you are listening to Coffin Talk, Interviews with the Living, a weekly podcast that explores how our views on death affect the way we live our life. And this week we have a guest whom I am actually familiar with because I was on his podcast. His name is Josh Abbandonato, and he calls himself the ultimate derelict. Why, you may be asking? Because he, like every other successful person on the planet, has experienced failure. He's failed at marriage, business, parenting, friendship, you name it, and he's learned from all of it. After all, failure, as he puts it, is just the next step in success. He recently joined the ranks of middle age after turning 40, and like I mentioned, he started a podcast. It's called the Derelict Podcast. I was on it. It's awesome. And the purpose of the podcast is he opens up his soul every week in real time to help other successful people deal with failure in their life. I also would like to end this on a positive note, so I would also like to mention he's the father of 3 wonderful kids. Welcome to the show, Josh. How's it going?
Thanks, Mike. It's great to be here.
Cool. I was intrigued when I met you and I was on your show, and I got to know you better through it and then also listening to other episodes. And so I always ask guests how old they are, which you kind of covered in the bio. You're over 40. But where did you grow up, and what generation, if any, do you consider yourself a member of?
So I just turned 40, 8 months ago. So I'm just joining the ranks. And I am a Zennial. So a Zennial, for anybody not familiar that are listening to this, it's a specific term that they came out with for people that are either young Gen X or old millennials, and they call them Zennials. Another term they use is the Oregon Trail generation. For anybody that's my age, they will know exactly what that means. And the reason I'm saying that is because I think that I have quite a bit of similarities with both generations. I don't really feel like I fit into one or the other. I actually feel like I fit into both pretty consistently.
Yeah, totally makes sense. I'm definitely from the same generation, laughing heartily at the Oregon Trail reference.
I like it as well because I was born and raised in Portland, Oregon, and I still live a half an hour away from Portland, Oregon.
Nice.
So I literally was born and raised probably 20 minutes away from the end of the Oregon Trail.
Wow.
So, it was a big deal for us growing up.
Yeah, that is cool. It's pretty awesome. I recommend it to everyone. It's the most beautiful area of the country. The winter sucks, but it's okay. You'll manage. Says the guy from Phoenix. Let's start with the Derelict podcast and like the theme for it and everything. As I was reading your bio, I was like laughing because I have also failed at the same things you have failed at, especially marriage. So, I mean, I'm in a good one now, but my point is I definitely royally failed at my first one. So, what was your track record of starting to fail, realizing you were failing, and then calling it a failure? Did that start in your 20s, your 30s, or like really abruptly recently?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, I've failed at things all my life. And one of the things that I just want to say for your guest, because a lot of people hear this word and they hear fail or they hear failure, and it just is cringy to most people, right? But the reason that we focus and we speak to a lot of men and their vulnerability and the stuff that they're going through, not that we don't speak to women, we do as well. But, I'm just so tired of people pretending like failure doesn't happen. And I think most people are too, right? You go on social media and you look at everything and you're like, that's not reality. The accounts I love to follow on social media are the ones making fun of the influencers, not the influencers, for that very reason. And, maybe that's why I'm not an influencer status yet on social media. I don't know. But here's the deal. The deal is that I lived most of my life putting on so many different faces and trying to be a chameleon for everybody around me and trying to just make everybody else happy, that it really didn't come crashing down until my mid-30s. And some events happened that ended up leading to a separation with my wife at the time. But during that was really when I felt like the biggest failure ever. When I went through my divorce, I thought my life was over. Speaking of coffin talk, right? I literally thought it wasn't that I was suicidal. I didn't want to kill myself because I have children and I've always cared about them more than anything else. But I just had no meaning in life, because I was so wrapped up in my marriage and this idea of what I had for my life and my family. So really, it's been a really intense process the last 6.5 years now of just working on myself and everything else. And it's amazing, it's funny that we're talking about this now, Mike, too, because you don't know this either, but a month ago, my girlfriend and I of 2 years broke up.
Oh man!
So,
wow.
So just also, by the way, the best relationship I've ever had by far in my life. And, so this last month has been really intense trying to practice what I preach. And, I'm still interviewing podcast guests and everything else while all this stuff is going on.
Man.
So
wow.
For me, it's not, like I'm at a point in my life, brother, where I want failure. And I know a lot of people are going to not believe me because trust me, sometimes I don't believe myself. But when I'm living in my truest identity, I actually want to fail because every time I do, that's when I learn and grow to the next generation of man that I want to become.
Yeah.
Every single time. And I never do it when I'm just comfortable having success. And that was a lot of my life. I built up my business over the years and got really comfortable and money was just rolling in. I didn't really have to do much about it. And that's not a bragging statement. I was making more money than some and a lot less than a lot of other people. I'm not saying that I was rich by any means, but I'm just saying I was comfortable. And growth doesn't occur in comfort.
Yeah.
At least from my experience.
No, there's so much profound wisdom in what you said. I don't want to unpack it all because it would be exhausting, but it was literally profound statement after profound statement, and it matches up with like so many people who, like we talked about the internet culture. The internet culture likes to think that like groups can't have bleeding over and things in common, but what you just said is probably the most common link between all groups and all other people and anyone who's feeling like they're in a subgenre of like life, which is that if you're not comfortable, you're constantly growing, you're constantly changing and evolving. And generally speaking, if you're dealing with like some maturity, your life value is going to be increasing. So I love all of that. Are you thankful on the days where there's a little bit of a break? When you just have like a good week with your kids and like things are like flowing, are you like actively thinking, oh, I'm hopeful new conflict emerges, or do you just kind of know it's going to come and so you can actually enjoy those moments?
Oh, no. I mean, my whole life right now is trying to be as present as humanly possible.
Got it.
So I also want to be present, whatever emotion I'm feeling. So trust me, dude, if there is a way to get through this life without conflict and without failing, I would pick it. I'm not a psychopath. I'm not crazy over here. It's not like I'm one of those guys that will get on social media and be like, yeah, bring it on. I'll do it. That's not what I'm saying here.
No.
And in fact, actually, just to speak to men for a second, because that's my whole mission in life right now. I think the way as men, and men, if you disagree, send me a message because I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But I firmly believe that as men, we require challenge. I know at least I do.
Yeah.
And the only way that I step up in my life is with challenge. And challenge isn't always fun. I'm not saying that it is.
Yeah.
But what I see a huge lacking in, especially in our world today, is where is that challenge coming from? And for most people, from what I see, if there is something where a guy is saying, hey, come challenge, it usually has to do with getting buff and lifting weights. And it stops there. There are so many men, so many influencers, everything else online, that it's all about just getting your body in shape. Well, I'll tell you what, man, I've spent more time in the last 6.5 years getting my mind and my soul in shape than my body. My body's in good shape, but I spend more time there because I know that that's where it starts. It starts with my mind and my soul. And if I can have those two things straight, then my body just follows suit. So to get back to answer your question, no, I'm not, I'm not like always seeking challenge. Like I love the days where I can just chill out and it's just a good day. I absolutely adore those days. But I also know that I've had times in my life where that then turns into, oh, I don't really have to work that much. So I'm just going to sit around and I'm going to smoke weed and I'm not going to do anything with my life and I'm going to be a loser. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know what you mean. I lived in Portland for 4 years.
Yeah. I'm not even against that. It's just more, there's no challenge in that. So it's just, even if you don't think it's getting old, or I should just speak for myself, even when I didn't feel like it was getting old, I still had to realize that because I wasn't getting challenged, I wasn't actually being fulfilled in my soul as much as I felt like I was relaxing.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I'm going to do something I've never done before because I actually think it's probably in everyone's best interest, especially our audience. Normally I would just let you say I broke up with my girlfriend of 2 years and I'd say I'm very sorry and move on. But since you are into helping others and you're into like discussing failure, I'm very curious, who failed, what failed in that relationship, and what are you learning from that?
Hey everyone, if you're a fan of the show, please head over to MikeyOp.com and click the subscribe button. It's the best way to support us, and it's free. That's MikeyOpp.com. Thanks.
Oh, you're gonna call me out, huh?
Yeah.
Hopefully she doesn't. Hopefully
That's
she
why
doesn't
I'm
hear
a
this.
little
So
like trepidatious. Like.
we're all good, man.
All
And
right.
I'm I'm the king of vulnerability. So here we go.
I mean, literally, I booked you immediately upon meeting you because you're not full of it. You really are cool with being vulnerable in public, and that is awesome and very helpful. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Yeah, I will do my best to answer this question without throwing anyone on the bus, because the way I want to start the answer to this question is I have nothing but love and respect for this person.
Cool.
And I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I've worked through all of the emotions that I needed to work through. This is actually the perfect week for you to talk to me because frankly, I feel like I rounded out all the emotions I needed to feel this week. So this is even better than if we would have spoken a week ago.
Awesome.
I think that at least for me, there have been areas of every relationship where there's health and then there's unhealth, obviously, to not be too vague. But for me, what I really wanted and needed in a relationship was I needed somebody that was working on themselves the way that I've been intensely working on myself the last 6.5 years. And by the way, again, none of these are brag statements. So for all the listeners, I failed. So like I just said, I've been working intensely on myself for the last 6.5 years, but I just want to make sure that everybody hears that not as a ego statement, because I didn't work on myself for 20 years before that. So don't think that because I'm saying that, I'm proud of myself and in person. No. It came from pain of failure of doing things the wrong way for a very long time of my life. And I'm just never going back there.
Yeah.
There were aspects of this relationship where I wanted her to work on herself more than she was willing to do. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. And by the way, I was just as guilty as this as well. So again, I'm not throwing anyone under the bus. Mm-hmm. I did the same thing. But, it's the old adage of, well, I see what they're like and I see when they're healthy and I can change them and that sort of thing. And you can't, obviously. So really, the reason it started falling apart, honestly, after, again, being the healthiest relationship I've ever had in my life, is that about 6 months ago, it really started falling apart because you can be someone's savior, you can be someone's sponsor, and you can be somebody's support. And I'll explain those real quick.
Cool.
So savior is not necessarily a religious term. Savior just means I'm here to save you. Sponsor, what I really think of is I think of 12-step when I think of this. And if you know anything about 12-step, or if you don't, a sponsor is somebody who just helps somebody else in recovery. So you could think of this as another practitioner, like a therapist or anything else. And then the third one is a support. And we all need that from friends. What I found myself being in this relationship after a while is that I was put in the position of savior and in this position of sponsor instead of just the position of support. And I don't think that that's healthy for any relationship. And what I would encourage all the listeners to think about is that it's really difficult sometimes to separate yourself from your feelings, where you're at, your relationship, etc.
Yeah.
But if you can have some curiosity and you can be what I call a curious observer, if you can be a curious observer and observe yourself in the relationship, one of the questions that I would ask yourself is, what roles are you fulfilling for the other person? Are you their savior? Are you their sponsor? Or are you their support? I don't see anything wrong with being somebody's support, but only if it doesn't go to savior or sponsor, because at that point, it doesn't work. Now, that being said, she did the same thing for me. So again, this is not a one-sided thing.
Yeah.
I realized, and I didn't realize this until after the relationship ended, it needed to end for that reason. Once it ended, though, I realized, wow, the mission and the passion and everything that I have in my life has really been put on the side because I've been so focused here on getting validation here and making sure that she's okay and making sure that we're okay. And that's taken so much of my energy and time and became really unhealthy for both of us. Again, not just one way.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
It was just the last thing I'll say is, it was the It was the first relationship I've ever ended in my life because historically I've just done things to push the other person away and I've let them end it and they've all ended it, including my marriage and everything else. And this is the first one where I just knew in my gut that it needed to end. And it was mutual, but it was, dude, that was one of the hardest days of my life. It really was. Because I love her and I care about her very much. And if she ever listens to this, then I hope that she knows that.
Oh man,
But,
that is wow. Yeah.
Here's the last thing I'll say is just if you're going through, anybody that's listening, if you're going through any sort of relationship difficulty or if you've gone through a relationship transition, this is what I would encourage you with. I firmly believe that everybody that goes through a transition like that has one of two choices. They can either, one, dig into themselves. And here's what I mean. They can work on the healing process. They can be healing. They can go in recovery. They can go to therapy. They can do all the healthy activities. They can get their body in shape, their mind in shape, their health in shape, right? Mm-hmm. So they could do that. Or option two is that they can dig into unhealthy activities and addiction. And I firmly believe that all of us come up to a T in the road when a relationship ends and we have to choose which path we're going to take. And it's not all or nothing. Of course, we can have healthy and unhealthy things happening at the same time, but you have to decide in your life, and it's your decision. It's no one else's decision. It doesn't matter what the other person did. Mm-hmm. I'm not a victim. It doesn't matter what she did. I only can take responsibility for what I did. But when you get to that T, you have to decide, am I respected enough? Do I love myself enough to choose the path of healing versus the path of destruction?
Wow. So I have a lot of follow-up questions I could ask, but I want to still ask you about like life and death and metaphysics. But I do want to ask this at the end of such a great and eloquent answer, which is, how has, it's a two-part question. One, would you have ended this relationship if it was a marriage? And two, how does getting married and then going through a divorce affect your opinion of whether or not you'll remarry and how long to wait before you remarry?
Well, for the first answer, I think it's a pretty easy answer. I don't really see any difference myself between a marriage and the partnership that I had.
Got it.
Frankly.
Okay.
So yeah, I would have ended it as well. But that also might be because I don't think I'm ever getting married again.
Okay, which is kind of the second question. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And it's not out of cynicism. I want to be really clear about that. It's not that I'm cynical against marriage. I actually think marriage is a really beautiful thing. I always did growing up. I grew up in a very religious household that believed in marriage, and I never believed in divorce or anything else. And so I do really think it's a beautiful thing. And I think that there's a certain level of commitment that comes with that, or at least there used to be. But I don't know. In today's world, what's the difference? I mean, a lot of relationships last more than marriages do. So I don't really know. For me, I guess, I don't see the difference in getting a document from the government versus just having full commitment towards somebody. I just don't see the difference. I also, frankly, and this is something that actually my girlfriend and I talked about a lot. We always said, like, if we ever came to a point where we thought we were a better fit with somebody else, or we thought that we were, completely unhappy and the other person just wasn't working on it, we would want the other person just to leave. Mm-hmm. Because frankly, like, I don't want to be with somebody that doesn't want to be with me, man. I mean, what do I care? Like, I don't know if that matters if it's a marriage or not, at least for me.
Yeah. How old are your three kids? How's the oldest one?
My son is 11 and my daughters are 7 and 9.
So do they ask you about the marriage that ended, or is it like pretty cut and dry and they just get it?
Well, it ended a long time ago.
Yeah.
So youngest doesn't remember us ever even being together. The middle barely does, and the oldest does a bit.
Okay.
So, it's been so long, and she's been remarried for so long that it doesn't come up. But, one interesting thing that happened actually not that long ago, which has never happened before, and I think it's just based on my daughter's age of being 7 now, where just, maybe 6 months ago or so, she started making comments about me and her mom getting back together.
Wow.
Out of the blue, which I thought was really weird. Like, I mean, at that point, I'm in a relationship with my girlfriend, and her mom is married to another guy.
Yeah.
But I think that she finally just got to the age to where that started making sense in her head. Like, oh man, I want my mom and dad to be together, because every kid wants their mom and dad to be together. It doesn't matter how unhealthy it is.
Yes.
You know, it's just what we want. It's
Yeah.
how we're designed, I believe.
I totally agree.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I've had more conversations, I would say, about that with my son than with my daughters, but it hasn't been a real big conversation because, you know, frankly, we don't have a great relationship. Unfortunately, it's very contentious. I wish it wasn't, but it is.
I'm sorry.
And she's been married for a long time.
Thank you. And again, I hope our audience is picking up on the fact that you're a really, really honest and vulnerable person, and it's great. I mean, it's helpful for me, and I'm asking questions as a remarried dad, but also with my effed up situation with my kid who's, you know, living in Thailand, and his birthday's in a month, and I'm mailing a card, and I don't even know if his mom's gonna like show it to him. So I understand the contentious stuff, but then on the other side, I do have 2 daughters with my wife, and like they're growing up, and they just see 2 parents who love each other and are together and stuff. So I'm like bracing for the day that the older daughter starts saying like, well, why does my brother live in Thailand? Is he mom's son? And like, why do you always say my brother, but your son, you know, and like all these questions. And then this is hilarious because it actually segues into the final section of the podcast. She just started asking about dying recently, and it's like terrifying. She's 3.5, 4, and it's only terrifying because she doesn't get it, and she's asking really tough questions that deserve better answers than I can give with her like mind and conceptual knowledge. So since she literally is like asking about death and stuff, my question for you is a little tailored and unique. I've never asked anyone on the podcast. 1, the normal question, what do you think happens when you die? And 2, do you ever talk to your children about what happens when they die?
Yeah, good questions. And, you know, I think just what I found, at least with my kids, which isn't an answer to your question, but I'll get to it.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
What I found with my kids is that kids want a couple things. They want to know that you're there, and they want to know that you're honest. And honestly, I don't think there's really much more that kids want. That's what they want. They want to know that you're there. They want to know that they're loved, which is part of being there, and they want to know that you're honest. So I try to be as honest as possible with my kids. However, I try to be as honest as possible with my kids without throwing anyone under the bus. You know, I do my very best to never throw their mom under the bus, no matter what she does, because it's not helpful. It's their mom. I want them to have a good relationship with their mom, and I want their mom to have a good relationship with them. I really do. That is a huge desire in my heart. I want the kids to have 2 really good, strong relationships with their parents. So that's that. You know, that's what I would encourage you with too, Mike. Like when you get to the point where you start having that conversation, just be honest, but do it in a way where you're not talking about somebody else's behavior. That's what I try to do. I try to just be honest with my kids about what the situation's like without bringing in other people's behavior. Because think about that.
I like that.
Often when we're honest with somebody, we're honest, and then we talk about somebody else's behavior. I mean, I even did it earlier in this podcast, right? When I was talking about my ex-girlfriend, even though I'm not trying to throw her under the bus, but I'm trying to talk as much about my behavior. And my behavior in that relationship was that I was allowing things that weren't healthy for me, right? And that's my behavior. Same with kids. So back to your other question. Like I told you before, I grew up in a very conservative, religious Christian household. So that demographic has a very clearly defined definition of what happens after you die. I don't know what my answer is anymore, to be honest with you. I knew that this is one of the questions you would ask just based on your podcast and listening to it. And I've been thinking about it, and I don't even know how to answer that. I guess this is probably the best way for me to answer. Probably my main answer is I don't care.
That's cool.
Because I firmly believe, so I still believe in a higher power, God, whatever you want to call it, him, he, she, they, whatever. I don't really care. I firmly believe that every human does believe in some sort of higher power. Maybe they call it universe.
I like that.
Maybe they call it higher power. Maybe they call it God. And frankly, I think that the only reason, first of all, atheists only exist in Western culture. No one in Eastern culture would ever believe there wasn't a God because they realize how insane it is. But the reason I really think that even atheists do believe in something, unless they're just a complete nihilist and they think there's no purpose in anything in life, which is just a very sad way to live. So I believe that exists. I believe that we're all interconnected in a lot of different ways. And without getting religious, because I'm not super religious, what I would say is because of that, I truly believe that we were designed and put here for a specific purpose, a specific mission. And each of our purposes and missions are different. And if we were just to all align and act in our true nature of how we've always been, this world would be perfect. I truly believe that. So, what happens after death? What my hope is, and I don't know, obviously, but what my hope is that that's what we go into. We go into some sort of world where everyone is living out their perfectly created humanity. Because if we are all living out who we were made to be, created to be, showed up to be, however you want to word that, I really believe it would be the most beautiful world in the world. The most beautiful place in the world, right? And here's the reason why, at least for me. And you've probably experienced this too, Mike. But think about when you've talked to somebody, or you've interacted with someone, or you've had a friendship with somebody that is lit. You can tell that they're living out what they were called to do. Like they were living out,
wow.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that person, I don't care what they do. I don't care if they are in the Olympics or some sort of sport. I don't care if they're in business. I don't care if they're a mechanic. Like, I don't care who they are or what they do. But when they live out what they clearly are meant to live out, it is the most beautiful thing that you can see. Therefore, I will take that logic to say, that's what I hope that afterlife looks like, whether it's heaven or afterlife or whatever you want to call it. I don't care.
Yeah.
What I hope it is that everyone is living out their absolute true identity without any of the junk that gets in our way.
That's a fantastic answer.
Thank you. So when I talk to the next part of your question is, I don't really talk to my kids about it.
Mm-hmm.
My kids are still, they still go to church sometimes with their mom, and we watch some stuff online that's kind of more spiritual related. And we don't really talk about it a whole lot. And honestly, my kids don't really bring it up a lot. And I think probably the reason why is because I try to spend as much time with my children trying to help them be completely present in whatever moment we're in. And I fail at that all the time, to bring back the F word. So, but that being said, I'm still trying, and I'm trying my best to absolutely stay present in whatever emotion, situation, etc. we're in. And frankly, I think that a lot of people spend way too much time thinking about what happens after we die or anything else, and then they don't focus on the present moment. Like, I grew up in a religious tradition as well that's all about the end times and what's happening at the end and prophecy and all this sort of stuff. And frankly, it just freaks everybody out. Everybody gets anxious about it. And then they start worrying about everything that's going on in the world instead of just living their life. And I'm like, how about you just not worry about all that? Because you can't control it. I can't control it. None of us can change it. So whatever is going to happen is going to happen. Why don't we just try to live out our true identity today?
Yeah, what you said was really helpful, because I do believe that paramount above everything else is just don't lie to your children ever. Don't let them see you lying, and don't be a liar. I also just think in general you shouldn't lie, but especially to your children. I do love to give my guests the floor at the end of the episode. So is there anything you want to talk about metaphysically or other? Is there something you want to say to my audience?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I think for whatever reason, this is on my mind, so I'm just going to speak it, and I'm hoping it speaks to somebody.
Awesome.
And that is that, it relates back to a lot of the conversation we've had today, including my breakup and everything else, where victims don't get ahead in life. So what I try to do is I try to sit with myself and ask myself where I have victim mentality. Because we all do. We all have a victim mentality from something from time to time. Victim mentality has never gotten me anywhere in life. It's gotten me sad. It's gotten me depressed. It's gotten me maybe worried about death or after death, etc. But it's never actually helped. Now, that's not to say, I want to be really clear here, that's not to say that there aren't victims. There are victims. I've been victim of terrible things. I'm sure you have. I'm sure everybody that's listening has. It doesn't remove the terrible thing. What I'm not saying is, I'm not saying there aren't any victims. I'm saying if anyone, including myself, lives in a victim mentality where it's everybody else's fault, that's a really rough place to live, man. It just is. And it's very unempowering. And I think a lot of our society, there's victim groups and everything else, and I'm not against those. I think that they're great, but I think a lot of the times they can be used as a crutch just to keep me in this mindset of, hey, I'm this victim, and if only the whole world would change, or politics would change, or my boyfriend or girlfriend would change, or my spouse would change, or my friends would change, then things would be good. But you know what? The only thing that you can control is your actions and your emotions. That's it. And you can't even control those, because I can't control my emotions. Dude, if you would have seen my emotions this last month after the breakup, they've been all over the wall. I can't even control those, right? And a lot of times I can't even control my actions. So for us to think that like somehow that's going to move us forward, what I found myself like, I don't usually talk to myself in the mirror. I'm not like hokey like that. But last night I yelled at myself in the mirror because I was having some really messed up thoughts in my head. And as I always say, if you're in your head, you're dead. So get out of your head and speak to yourself. There's something about hearing your voice, which is one of the reasons I actually love doing my own podcast. And it's not because I'm obsessed with my voice. It's because hearing my voice and the advice that's coming out of my voice when I'm actually speaking it is much more powerful than when I'm thinking it.
Yeah. Wow.
So last night I was just yelling at myself in the mirror about what my mission was, what I loved about myself and everything else. And it instantly changed my attitude. It instantly changed from wanting to be in this victim spot to realizing I'm a victor.
That was such a great answer. Again, everyone, his name is Josh Abandonado, and you can find his podcast everywhere on the internet. Thank you to everyone for listening to the show. As always, if you want to help out the show, please head over to MikeYop.com. That's MikeYopp.com, and sign up for the free weekly letter. My name is Mike Oppenheim. You have been listening to Coffin Talk, and we will see you soon.